Hello, this is Bruce.
And Jackie from Tourist Trek.
We travel as much of the world as possible and then assemble the things that we learned, both good and bad, into videos so that we can pass that learning experience on to you.
We have had some fantastic trips with itineraries that have worked out extremely well. The photos that you are watching are from just some of our more memorable trips.
I do a lot of research before we depart, so hopefully our channel can save you some time.
Wherever you go, whatever your plans, travel smart and travel safe. Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Bruce.
And we're with Tourist Trek.
And we're here today to talk to you about a trip that we recently took from Portland, Oregon to Vancouver, British Columbia on the Amtrak Cascades train. And it just so happened that Oregon was the last state out of all 50 states that I haven't been to. And you've never been to Vancouver. And you also have that crazy love of public transportation, trains, buses, whatever.
Well, we do come from Arizona where there's not a public transit system that's, worth much. So it is nice to get to go and explore different transit systems.
So I thought, well, we could go to Portland, Oregon in general. So we actually went to the west side, to the coast. Stayed in Yachats and played around in Oregon for a little while, and we went up to Portland. But we're not really covering that. That'll be a different video. What we're covering is truly the Amtrak Cascades. Yeah. And I knew you would love it. I did it years ago, and kids really enjoyed the time, and it went well. We had a slightly different experience this time, but we'll get into that. And what I would say is a couple of things. In the U.S., we just don't have a lot of trains. We've got some on the East Coast, but like in Phoenix,
we have a light rail.
Well, we do for public transportation in Phoenix, but there's only, I think there's pretty much one line that goes down to New Orleans and then up to, I think, LA. And that's basically it. That's pretty much your options.
Yeah, I think they call it the Sunset Trail or something.
Yeah, so there's very specific train lines. I talked to an engineer on one of our trips, and he said that the problem is in the US is that the freight, the value of shipping that freight on a train is much more than what they can get for passenger trains. He said that's really, at the end of the day, that's why. So that's kind of interesting. But when you go to book, it was pretty easy to book. You can go just to amtrak.com and select Cascades, and you put in the starting station and the ending station, and pretty straightforward, really. I think it's probably a good time to mention, I do most of the planning. So trains in Europe, much more fun. But what can be difficult there is booking. You're not sure who actually owns the train that you want to get on. So one of the things that I use is an app called Rome to Rio. So it's ROME, the number 2, Rio, RIO. And you can also go on the internet to rometorio.com. You put in where you want to go, where you're starting, where you want to go, and it'll come back and show you all kinds of options of trains, planes, automobiles, et cetera, et cetera. And but it'll specifically tell you which website has that train that they're talking about. So that was really useful. I've also, in that same vein, particularly more subways, we're kind of Apple people. So we use Apple Maps a lot. And I'll always track trains, whether we're on a subway or whatever, just to make sure we're going in the right direction. And particularly with subways, it usually tells you really good instructions about how and where and which train to get on, et cetera.
And even how long between trains. It'll say you have 2 minutes, or it'll be leaving in 10 minutes.
Right. So getting back to the booking for this particular trip on Amtrak, we paid $248 for 2 coach tickets, which I didn't think. I mean, it isn't terrible, but also don't think it was a steal.
Right.
Where again in Europe, the trains are much less expensive. For fun, just before we did this, I went and checked out a couple weeks to see what a flight might have been. Unfortunately, I didn't check it on the days we traveled, but right now, 2 weeks out, it would be $293 per person to just fly. And
it's still a savings. Train.
It is. It's, a little over half the cost. But the thing to know about trains, the only reason we did a train is this one. She loves it. So there's value in that to us. But to a lot of other people, the value is going to be in speed. That is hands down the airport. Trains take a long time to go from Portland, Oregon, through the state of Washington, just across the border. So really, I mean, Portland's pretty much on the border to Washington,
yeah.
And then the entire state of Washington, and then Vancouver is just over the border of Washington State. So it's really just crossing Washington. It took us 10 hours. So it was a very long. So be prepared for that. I'm not sure how much you checked it out, but I checked out first class. I didn't really see any difference. And you don't get more service or anything else as far as I could tell. Maybe I'm missing something, but that was my conclusion.
I'll say, though, that we had coach seats and we had plenty of space, so it didn't feel like we were cramped up or anything. So we're on an airplane. If you're in coach, it's clearly coach versus first class. We're on the train. You just had plenty of space and it was comfortable. And it took a long time, but if you are sitting in the right spot, you've got beautiful views. You can listen to music or watch shows or something. So
well, we'll talk about on the train in a few minutes, and we'll get back to that. One thing that we noticed, because we ended up, we took the train from Portland, Oregon to Vancouver, and for whatever reason, the flights home from Vancouver were just insane pricing. So I booked the train again from Vancouver to Seattle, Washington, and then flew out of there. So we were actually on the same line, but 2 different days and 2 different trains. And there was a huge difference between those 2 trains. One was much nicer than the other. I don't know how you can determine that. I don't think you can when you book, and that's unfortunate, but there was significantly difference. And I don't know what else about booking.
Well, fortunately for me, I have my own person who takes care of all of that. So I really don't get into the details and the nuance of the booking, aside from just saying, oh, yes, that sounds wonderful. And that's my whole.
So a couple of things, advantages of trains is when you're headed to the train depot, they're small. Even in Portland and in Vancouver, they had like 10 gates.
Yeah,
most.
That. Yeah, it's small.
It's real small. And you're really probably not going to have a lot in the way of shopping. The one in Vancouver did have A&W.
It had an A&W, and then I think it had like a little gift shop or something.
A little gift shop.
But nothing.
So you're not going to kill a lot of time there. So you really only need to get there 10 minutes early. If you're checking luggage, you'll need to get there a little bit earlier. But even that doesn't take very long, right. An extra 10 minutes. And you have essentially no security screening.
Yeah.
We didn't have to go through metal detectors or x-ray machines or anything. So that's certainly nice. So it's convenient from that standpoint for sure. What else, Jackie?
Um, I think just in general, again, we got there really early because we were thinking about planes, and so we got there super early, and it was really unnecessary to be there that early. So yeah, like Bruce said, just make sure you're there. Obviously, you don't want to get there too short of time because they will leave without you, but you just don't need that much time waiting.
And I would say talk to people at the station. Uh, Generally, as I recall, we did not have assigned seats. So you went in, you selected your seats. So for instance, on our ride from Portland to Vancouver, you're going up the west coast of Washington for the most part. So what that means is you got the ocean on the left hand side of the train, and it isn't always obvious which direction the train is heading and things like that. So that's why it's good to get some information
Hmm.
from the employees and so
Yeah.
forth. And some trains will be good on the left, some will be good on the right, and coming back the other way, it kind of got me backwards because the train basically went backwards.
Yeah.
So it was still kind of the left hand side of the train. Um,
Yeah, you want to ask which side to sit on because one of the great things about trains is that you've got these gorgeous views. I mean, we have an amazing country, and if you can sit on a train and just watch it go by, as long as you've got the right side of the train to sit on, just beautiful, breathtaking views.
yeah, they certainly can be. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, Not sure how to be politically correct on this one. Just be aware that you're going to run into all types of fellow travelers on a train
Yeah.
that you don't necessarily see in an airport. Um, for instance, in Vancouver, right?
Yeah.
Coming back,
Yep.
there was a fellow homeless or near homeless,
For sure on drugs. I think that's fair to
or
say.
and probably some behavioral challenges, that was making threats to passengers and being really loud and obnoxious, and they ended up calling security on him, which at least there was security.
Right, there is security in
There was one
there.
guy, but
Well, it was one guy that came to help, but the lady that we talked to went to get that guy so she could take care of the passenger.
so
Yeah.
it's a little different. I can tell you that for sure.
Just a reminder, if you're enjoying this video, please like it, add a comment about some of your experiences at this destination, share it with a friend, and definitely subscribe.
Anything else at the depot?
I don't think so. Just
Oh yeah.
oh,
Okay, really important when checking luggage. Not all the stops. When you go from a major city to a major city, you're fine. But if you're, and this is part of the reason it takes so long, is they make all kinds of little stops all the way along the way. And many of those do not have baggage handlers. So in that case, you got to take your luggage onto the train, even if it's big luggage, find a place for it, figure out how to handle it, which isn't terrible. It's not fun,
sure.
if you got heavy luggage trying to bring it up onto the train and stuff. But when they stop at those smaller stations, they're relatively quick. You do
Yeah.
not have enough time to go, oh, hey, by the way, I'm here. Let me go get my luggage, pull it down, and they're already gone. So you've got to be kind of at the door with your luggage waiting to get off, which is why, if you're not familiar with the route, that's why I like to be tracking it on Apple Maps or whatever. So That is a fairly important thing to do.
And they do come by and say and announce what stop you're heading up to, but still, it's good to have it so you can track it yourself.
And yeah, so I think that's all I can think of at the station. Let's talk about on the train. So first of all, you might want to bring your own food. They had food on the train.
And the food's fine. I mean, it's not super cheap, but it's really not extremely expensive. It's not like airport cost or anything. It's relatively decent priced.
It is microwave though.
It's not, you're not talking gourmet dishes, but it wasn't bad. We had sandwiches, and didn't I get a soup, I think, and
I think I asked for a hamburger, and the guy said, you might want to rethink that.
Yeah, so sandwiches are fine. Probably don't do any of the hot foods.
And you're probably not, now we did get food and brought it on the train at the Vancouver station, but you just can't count on that on a lot of the stations. There was no food at all in Portland.
Yeah.
So again, you might want to bring your own. If you do want to get on the food on the train, it's going to be at the front or the back, and they say they're going to tell you, but they kind of don't tell you when it's available, and there will be a bunch of people in line. So you might want to hurry to be there first. And really, that line didn't dwindle a whole lot throughout the entire trip.
I mean, granted, we had a 10-hour trip, so we weren't in like any kind of a hurry outside of just if you're hungry, you want to eat, and you don't want to stand in a long line. But outside of that, but it's not like unless you're getting off fairly quick after getting on, you do have time.
Well, why don't you tell us about the bathrooms, honey?
Well, they're not super clean, but they're large. I mean, I felt like the bathrooms were pretty big, so you had a lot of space. But also, when the train's moving around, sometimes it's a little bit wonky to stand and sit in there. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to have to use them. So just, maybe bring wipes, like sanitary wipes to clean the toilet off.
I'm going to go with disgusting.
They're not clean.
So and you brought up a good point too. Again, I'll do a contrast with Europe. That train, the Cascades train, going on the route that we did, it felt like pretty substantial turbulence if you were on an airplane. So an airplane is way more smooth than this. Again, in Europe, most of the rails that I've been on, and I've been on a fair amount, have been smooth. Even on a recent separate trip, we were in New Jersey, and the New Jersey train system
was pretty smooth.
But that Cascade, that Cascades was rocky.
Another interesting comparison between the Europe trains and American trains, and I guess even like parts of America where we have a good train system, is that the time it takes. So Cascades was 10 hours from, like you said, Portland to Vancouver, and it seems like you can travel like a big chunk of Europe in a much smaller amount of time. Like it feels like it's only a couple hours from one country to another in Europe, and here it's like 10 hours.
But legitimately, our country is much larger.
We do have a larger.
But I did a little bit of calculations, and roughly it seemed like we were averaging about max was like 40 miles an hour. That was a max. Yeah. Anyway, a couple of things. You want to make sure you bring headphones, because whether you're watching a movie or listening to a book or listening to music or just want quiet, bring your headphones. It was interesting. Both times we ran that route, the train left on time, but was an hour late both times.
Getting to the destinations, yeah.
Right. The one of the advantages, of course, with trains is you don't have severe turbulence. So they won't tell you that you have to remain seated.
Right.
And they have Wi-Fi. So you can try to do some work. Unfortunately, our experience with the Wi-Fi it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's not really fast. So you're talking really slow speed.
I was having trouble just doing email. And some of the times we couldn't get it at all. And I had better luck just using my cell coverage
Mm-hmm.
rather than their Wi-Fi.
So one thing to be prepared is just to make sure you're downloading. If you have shows you want to watch or anything, download some of those so you have them ready to go. You're not going to be able to stream on that Wi-Fi for sure. And then, just keeping in mind that you want to come on board with everything already charged, and maybe bring extra chargers because not all of the plugs worked for, the electrical sockets didn't always work.
Most of them
Most
didn't.
of them didn't work.
I think we found one that did. And because of that rockiness on the train that we talked about, it's not the easiest to just, hey, I'm going to get up and walk down the thing. You are like holding on.
Mm-hmm.
And people have stuff in the middle of their aisles and their feet are out there and,
Mm-hmm.
And
they're sleeping, so it's hard to move people to get around them.
Now, what you don't want to do is what happened on the Vancouver to Seattle segment. And we'll get into why this was such a big deal. But people would sit down and take a seat and then throw all their stuff in the seat next to them so nobody could sit there. That's really rude. Don't do that. And the reason that it was so much of a problem, you want to handle this one?
Well, I think where you're going with that is air conditioning was not always working.
Not really a thing. Who needs air conditioning?
So it's really hot. It wasn't the entire train. It was certain cars. It was certain cars that had the issue. And so both times we were lucky enough to sit in those cars that didn't have great air conditioning. The way there, it was bad until we got to Seattle, which was halfway point from Portland to Vancouver. So Seattle was the middle point, and that's where they had somebody to come on board and do some electrical engineering to get that working. So half the trip was really hot. And then on the way back, it was off and on working.
Yeah, it was just absolutely downright miserable. Now, to be fair, when we were in Portland, hello global warming, it was 25 degrees over normal temperature in Portland. So it was on the way up, it was actually both times, it was every bit of 95 plus degrees in the train. Yeah. You cannot open windows. The windows are not openable. There's no way to get relief. So I will not take another Amtrak train unless I have a portable fan. So I bought one on Amazon for, $10 or something like that. And it was just miserable. On the way up, they tried. They reseated some people. They were handing out water. They said they were going to do ice, but
somehow that got missed by the
that kind of got missed, or you had to go back to get it and stand in the food line or whatever. But it was bad. On the way back, I asked the conductor, told him that we had a horrific time on the way up, and I said, is car 9 working? Is the air conditioning? And he looked at a sheet. Yep, I think so. Well, it wasn't. And again, 95. And at that point, I was getting pretty grouchy. Because at one point I heard the staff got in kind of an argument with a passenger, and the passenger was clearly voicing their displeasure with sweating. And essentially the employee said, look, I deal with this every day, okay? Wow. Good maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and those trains, and this is an important thing. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but let me be very clear. The train that we came up on was not the same train we went down on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and from everything, basic rule is I would not trust air conditioning on any Amtrak train. So be prepared to take care of it. But on the way down, it was terrible because, like I said, in the air conditioned trains, of course, the staff said, well, you can move to another train. And I walked up from car to car, figured out which trains had the air conditioning, which wasn't. That wasn't hard to do. You knew as soon as you walked in. But then trying to find seats, and even separate seats. And these people just had luggage. And I'm not going to go up to somebody and say, sir, can you move your luggage so that I can sit next to you? That's not my job.
Right.
And I asked the conductors to help with that, and they had no interest in it, in helping at all, or reseating anybody or anything.
Giving water. They didn't give water on that second train.
They refused.
Way home either, yeah.
I asked. They refused to give water. I can't overstate how disappointed I am with Amtrak, and my desire basically never to run Amtrak again. But anyway.
But they have beautiful views.
They do have beautiful views. Let's see, what else do we have? Well, I think that pretty much covers most. Can you think anything else to share with them to help their travels?
I think one thing, so Bruce was talking about bringing food with you. So just to clarify, you want to pick it up somewhere outside of the station, and to know that there's not, because it's not an airport, you don't have to worry about it going through security. So you can pick up whatever you might like outside of the train station and bring it in and get on the train with no issues.
That being said, we should probably throw in that you are not supposed to bring alcohol on. Search for it.
But they serve beer and wine on the train. That's one of the things you can purchase on the train, along with other beverages, obviously.
Yep. But all that being said, and my grouchiness aside, trains can be fun. I just really hope that the U.S. kind of embraces trains, and there's a little bit more talk about it, and some high-speed rail in certain areas. So it looks like maybe it's catching back on a little bit.
That would be great. I will say that as far as you kind of think of our country as being, just kind of this high-tech, innovative, first for everything kind of country, and it really isn't when it comes to trains. So if you look at a train in any other country, it seems like, technology is there. You've got, it's just much cleaner, and Wi-Fi works, and you can see exactly where you're at. There's screens and stuff, and this one didn't have that.
And in Europe, I hate to keep saying it, but Europe, they are on it.
Yeah.
If that train is going to be there at 10:56, it is there at 10:56. If it says it's going to leave at 11:05, it leaves at 11:05. Don't be late. Yeah.
You don't want to be late for these trains either, because they will leave you, but you can't guarantee that they're going to be on time, but they will leave you if you're not on time.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up this segment.
Yeah, I think so.
So thanks for watching. And, please subscribe, like it if you like, forward it to whoever you think would benefit from it. And we appreciate your time.
Yeah. And if you do ever go on the Cascades trip, we'd love to hear what your experience was like. So please leave that in our comments.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Please like the video and add a comment about some of your favorite experiences at this destination. Share it with a friend, and definitely subscribe.